Hello and welcome to the Agile Innovation Leaders podcast. I'm Ula Ojiaku. On this podcast, I speak with world-class leaders and doers about themselves and a variety of topics spanning agile, lean innovation, business, leadership, and much more, with actionable takeaways for you, the listener. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Agile Innovation Leaders podcast. I had the privilege on the 30th of March 2022 to speak at the Agile Coach Conference organized by Gladwell Academy. My talk was focused on the SLoMoSH canvas, which is a tool that I had developed to help with facilitating conversations amongst teams to clarify roles and responsibilities. The SLoMoSH canvas has other use cases. However, my talk was just focused on the clarification of roles and responsibilities and how it could be used in that situation. Without further ado, my talk at the 2022 Agile Coach Conference in Amsterdam.
It's a great privilege to be here live and in person. The last time I attended and participated in a face-to-face conference was back in 2019, December 2019 in San Francisco, so you can't imagine how refreshing it is to be out there. So I'm here to, all the way from the United Kingdom, I'm here to, speak to you about the topic set up for success, clarifying roles and responsibilities using the SLoMoSH canvas. I know what's that word SLoMoSH. I made it up as you're going to realize. But without further ado, a little bit about myself. I have about 20 years of experience, professional experience. Started off in engineering, hands-on engineering roles in telecommunications, oil and gas industry. Then kind of moved on to that more business-facing, interfacing type of role. With teams where I kind of translating the conversation. And my first foray into agile ways of working was about 16 years ago as a field engineer with SLoMoSH. I was a field engineer, and we were working in stand-ups, we had Kanbans and all that, but we didn't use the term agile. It wasn't a buzzword then. So as coaches, and I'm sure because we were predominantly agile coaches in the audience here, I've noticed part of our satisfaction or the satisfaction that comes from our jobs is when the teams, the leaders, the people we're coaching, have those aha moments. And I love what Lisa said in the morning. It is really about taking a holistic view, building those relationships, meeting people where they are. So that's what I love about being an agile coach. I host the podcast Agile Innovation Leaders, and I've been privileged to have people like Jeff Sutherland, Steve Blank, Alex Oswald there, but that's not why we're here. So we're going to do an icebreaker. I have two children. I have a son who's 11 and a daughter, Kiki, who's 9. So one day Kiki comes back from school and says, I'm busy working, I'm really in the zone, I'm working. It's like, Mom, I have something for you. I have a game, you have to play. And I'm like, in my mind, I don't need this right now, but I have to be a loving parent who is mindful and in the zone. So, all right, Kiki, so what do you have for me? He said, all right, so I'm going to teach you that. No need to tell you the story, but the key thing is, now I'm going to mention 3 words in succession. After each word, you'd use, A, shout out A, and raise your left hand if it's an A, if that word matches with an A. So if it's an animal, you raise your left hand. If it's a food, the word that I call, raise your right hand. You can also shout it out if you feel like that. And if it's a place, C, then raise both hands and say C. Does that sound clear enough? Okay, let's do a trial right now. So, well, you did it. So, I was going to say poodle. Awesome. Burger. You guys are rocking it. And a castle. Okay, awesome. You guys have gotten it. Now let's do the real thing, okay? So, I'm going to mention it, randomly. I know you're watching and wondering what I'm doing. Yogurt. Okay, B. Good. Lion. Are you sure? Yes, you are. Of course, it's an animal. A lion is an animal. All right, third and the last. Turkey. That was exactly what my daughter did to me. She said, turkey, and I was like, okay, where? Because mine was more of, okay, stand there is A, stand there is B, stand there is C. But I will take the blame. As a responsible, Agile coach, I'll say, if I had wanted you to understand, I would have explained it better. That is the words of, the famous Johann Cruyff. And I should have explained it better because, I kind of, hands up if you didn't quite go into the alveolus because the impression based on the instruction was that, the words would fit into one box, either it's going to be A or B or C. Hands up if that was your impression. Okay, the rest of you could see like 2-3 steps ahead. Awesome. Please, call me. Maybe we have a business to start because we can see into the future. But that's the case with transformation initiatives. There are lots of moving wheels. It's about big, change at a massive scale. And the fact is, with all the changes happening, and people are, complex beings. And as Lisa mentioned again in How Talk earlier on today, I was taking copious notes for all the speakers when you all were speaking. It's really about moving from that mindset of an organization and people as machines to an organization, as a complex ecosystem. And I don't know about you, but for most transformation, and no matter where you are in your transformation journey, whether you're, very mature or you're, just at the beginning of the journey or somewhere in between, the fact is there are always going to be moving parts, and with change, you would need to change and adapt as you go on. So, again, Lisa, by now you all know I'm a massive Lisa fan, so please. But the key thing is, how work has really impacted a lot of the things we do in terms of, as Agile coaches and the Agile coaching competencies that, she and Michael Stade developed, has kind of helped with clarifying what are those multiple hats. Those balls that we need to juggle as Agile coaches, as we support and lead, and help the teams, as they move on the transformation, the journey to Agile ways of working and developing an Agile mindset. Now, usually it will start with some sort of training, to train people into the roles to understand, because people need to be trained. And I think there was during the session with Westfall, Eduardo and Bruno, there's something about needing to combine education with coaching. So in terms of the initial starting point of training people, let's say classroom-based training, there would be, if you as an adult coach are the one running that training, you need to kind of have your teacher's hat on. Lisa, am I correct, or am I kind of bundling it up? You're
doing beautifully. I'm overwhelmed.
Okay, well, please correct me because you are the expert and that's your work then. Anyway, so you have to have that teaching hat on. But the main message today that I want to bring to you here is this. The key point is this. More often than not, just classroom-based training or training of any sort isn't quite enough for the teams to start adapting or applying the learnings to their context. Even within the same organization, you'll find out that no two teams are alike, and you might have a product owner in team A, product owner in team B. They, on paper, they have the same, kind of role, the title, However, the nuances of work they do with their team might mean that there are other things that they will need to take on as a result of the nature of their work and the team that they belong to. And so, in what I'm going to be sharing with you in terms of this case study, I've also had to, kind of become a neutral process holder, to facilitate conversations with the teams. And this is with the purpose of helping them to connect the dots. Okay? Just to help them connect the dots, because they need to get to a shared understanding of whatever topic it is that they are having. So I picked this graphic from the internet. Unfortunately, I don't know who the author, the original originator is, but credit to them, it kind of beautifully illustrates the concept. You might have the same people in the room, listening to this talk right now like we are. If you look at this, the picture here, there are three people looking at a picture of a truck, but what you can see is that different elements of the picture is coming out, jumping out at them. But you need to make sure that they also have a joined up view, to have the bigger picture in mind. So how does that apply to us as Agile coaches? It's not about having lots of different frameworks, and we don't want to go into that rut of being like the proverbial person with a hammer and seeing everything as a nail. It's about taking the time to understand the context. And as Sharon and Yasmin and I said in their talk, you need to have tools in the toolbox. But you also need to know that it's not about the tools in the toolbox. It's, according to my colleague Scott Hennell, who says, the power of the tool is in the conversation it creates. It goes back to the people. It's about helping them to have a conversation so that they have a shared understanding to work together more effectively. And so, a bit of the case study in my case. So I am currently a senior Agile coach with a multinational retail organization. If you look into my LinkedIn profile, you know which organization that is. So there is this, there were these teams, and when the organization started its Agile transformation about 4 years ago or something, like thereabouts, for that team they were pivoted into Agile, single Agile team, like the team level, team. Okay? And then over time, some further analysis was done, and the leadership decided, now that's a story for another day, but go with me here. So decided, okay, they wanted it to be a safe art. And so the team was now being pivoted into the combined safe art. Now, I had joined the organization after the initial, the first, pivot to Agile teams, and what I noticed interacting with those teams was that the teams already struggled because they were moving from a traditional project management, waterfall-based approach, to delivery into Agile. And as Agile teams, Scrum teams, Kanban teams, they were already struggling. I mean, they were delivering. It's almost like, have you ever had a toothache? Were you able to eat? But how you ate, and enjoy your food, when you had a toothache versus when everything is okay, is much different. So they were delivering, all right, but it's almost like you're, chewing with a toothache or hobbling with a bad food. You're moving, but you're not moving in the most effective way you could. So I realized they had this problem. And just waving, if I'm your fairy godmother and I wave a safe wand over you with all due respect, it wasn't going to make the problem go away. There was something we needed to get to the root cause. So sometimes, yes, we need, it's all about trying to make it light touch and as simple as possible, reduce the cognitive load, as Marielle said in the workshop earlier. But there are times that, the hard things have to be done. There are times you have to strip down, get into the weeds, get into the detail. And based on the conversation with the RTE, I designed a session for the key roles, because those were the key points. If you know the theory of constraints, it's about looking at where the bottleneck is and then addressing the bottleneck to improve the flow. And of course, as the system, because there would definitely be something else to improve, but right now the key bottleneck was with the epic owner roles, the product management roles, the product owner scrum master roles. So those were the areas we decided to focus on, because you can't boil the ocean. So, the SLoMoSH canvas. Now, I wouldn't say that it was all original, but it's more of a synthesis of ideas, concepts, mental models that I've been exposed to over the past 20 years. But the main influence for this SLoMoSH canvas was the work of Alex Osterwalder and Yves Pion, the business model canvas. And of course, when I last spoke with Alex Osterwalder, I had him as a guest in the podcast, he said, it's really about making things visual. It's important, it makes it easier for conversation, helps people to get on the same page. And another influence in developing this was from the work of an executive coach known as Tony Jerry with a J, and he wrote this book, Strategic Acceleration. And you had the MOLO matrix, which is like more of, less of. So based on that, I kind of developed this, which I was using as well for personal reasons, in terms of, okay, where do I want to be in future? How do I get there? What do I need to do more of, less of? What do I need to stop entirely, hand over? And I kind of, as I was thinking about this in the middle of the night, I thought, this might work for the teams we're talking about. But let me explain, the SLoMoSH canvas. Has anyone figured out why it's named SLoMoSH?
Yes.
Okay. Here you go. Sorry, can the mic be?
Okay. It's the first letters.
The first letters. Okay, cool. Thank you. We gave up looking for the yeah. So the first letters. So the starts, the first letter of start, less of, more of, then stop and hand over. So that's where the SLoMoSH. And I'm still thinking of, is there anything better to call this? So if you have any ideas, please let me know. But that's what it's called. Now the key thing, how does it work? It's more in the center. You have the core responsibilities that will be, common to all the roles. It's better when you do it role by role. So if it's about a particular role or something you're facing, you have those responsibilities and tasks, and it's in the center, and there is no change, no action needs to be done. And usually that would be a starting point, okay, for the conversation. Now, the actions that will come out and the conversation will be when you're now looking at those CPs, you kind of have a conversation about it as we look at the data, and then you find out, are there things that you should be doing that you're not doing and you should start? You put it there. Are there things that you should be doing as part of your role that you're not doing, you're not doing as often as you should? Maybe you put it in the more of. Less of would be the reverse of more of. And then other things, stop. This part is really important because as human beings, we are adverse to, kind of losing things and taking things off, losing things. We'd rather pile on things without taking off, some other things consequently. And that is a mindset that we, because there should be the art of maximizing the work, the amount of work not done. So it's also important to challenge the teams. Are there things that you should stop doing? And stop means stop. Don't hand it over to anyone because it's not adding value now. It wasn't adding value then, it's not going to add value in the future. And then, just as important is the handover part. Are there things that you're doing in your current role or in the current context, which in the new role, in the new structure, which don't necessarily apply to what your role as you understand it now, but someone needs to do it or else things will fall through the cracks and it's going to impact our delivery, and that would be in the handover space. Okay? So, This is for you now. 2 minutes. Can we all take the time to pause and reflect? And I acknowledge it might not be applicable to you because we all have different situations and contexts and problems that we're solving right now. So if it doesn't apply to you, that's fine. But can you pause and reflect individually on what you've heard so far? Can you think about scenarios in your current context, in your current work, where you could use this, the canvas, or where you're needing to have the conversations that this canvas could help you with? What are those scenarios?
Okay.
So it's your individual pause and think. It's not that I'm not thinking about what to say. I'm giving you 30 seconds to think about it. And you want to share the result of your conversation. So, okay. Oh, you two as well, after him. Thank you, sir.
I hope it's working, yeah?
It is working.
Yeah, we were just discussing challenges that we had in multiple teams, and the conclusion of the challenges was that team motivation and let's say the relationship between team members it started deteriorating due to the moving to remote working, right? So there were misunderstanding what the team lead needs to do, what the product owner needs to do, what the scrum master needs to do, or even every single member of the team. So what we did different kind of workshops. But now, when I say this, it perfectly fits into what we did, and I think we could use, we could benefit a lot from this. It was not structured like you did, but it's more clear and straightforward. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that, and yes, I'll be sharing my context. So thank you for sharing that. We have just enough time. Thank you.
I think we can use this in our organization. I'm working for the government for the POFMAC, we call it, the product owner, vakgroep manager, and Agile Coach Conference, and it's like we talk about the teams, but not about the individuals, but not about the teams, but what are we talking about? Because we say the product owner is there for the product, and the manager is there for the people, and the agile coach is there for the team. But sometimes it feels like no one has the responsibility. So we can use this very wise to, hey, what can we stop talking about?
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Right. Thank you. So what did I do? Let's move on. So a case study with the very team that I was talking about, the team of teams in this case. Now, something else I didn't share about the challenges they were facing was this, having gone to the training, because let's say, for example, some of them were previously project managers, and as part of the transformation pivot, they were now said, okay, the way it was done again is another conversation, and it was more of a combination of, okay, where do you think you fit in now that this is what this role does, this is what that role does, and that's what the role does. So it was a combination of that and line management, kind of making joint decisions to give people new roles. And so as a traditional project manager, you'd expect that you're making sure things are on time, on budget, on schedule. You liaise with third parties, maybe vendors as required to make sure everyone is communicating. That's a traditional project management role. You would also be monitoring the spend. How much are we spending on this project? The financial reporting, the compliance, to make sure that we're being compliant. And being a publicly traded organization, you also have to make sure that you're on the straight and narrow. It's not directly giving value to the end customer, but it needs to be done if you want to operate as an organization, if you want to be legally traded. So these things still need to be done. But in the new roles, the product owner role, generic, it doesn't have anything about managing compliance issues, it doesn't have anything about financial reporting. And so when they were operating as that, agile team, these things were falling through the cracks. Because I said, yeah, I used to be a project manager, but now I'm a scrum master. There's nothing that says, as a scrum master, I need to do that. Same thing with the product owner. So who does it? Because it needs to be done. Okay? So in this simplified example, let's assume we're doing this session with product owners. Now I populated the core area or the consumer area with the generic responsibilities that a product owner will do. Of course, this is not exhaustive. This is only for illustration. Then at the start of the session, I'll be like, okay, now these are the things generically you say a product owner will need to do. But are there other things that you currently do that's not in the box? Feel free to create a sticky and put it there, because we need to have a conversation. We need to make it visible, because most people have what they do in their heads, and other people, remember the picture with the boss and all that, and 3 people are looking at it. One is seeing the driver, the other one is seeing the cargo, the other one is just seeing the vehicle. So let's all visualize it and talk through it. I told you sometimes you need to get into the weed of things so that everyone has a shared understanding. So imagine that the ones or the items in the bold italics are the ones that down added. I said, oh, I also manage compliance issues. Oh, I also participated in release planning. Oh, and I also produce status reports for the senior management. All right, let's put it there. Now, after having the conversation sticky by sticky, let's assume in this hypothetical session, this is what we came up with. So remember, in the core parts, it's more whatever it says that you're doing, and you're happy with it, you think you're doing okay, there's nothing that needs to change, that's fine, leave it there. So let's assume that the product owner group, they're saying, okay, we already create starter stories, we prioritize our backlog, and we also participate in release planning, and we think it's relevant to where we're going, so we have to stay there. But there might be other things that they have, had a conversation about, and they say, okay, you know what, we haven't really been conducting backlog refinement sessions, and we need to do that a bit more thoughtfully, and we need to just start doing it basically. That goes in the start place. And maybe let's say something about contributing to the product vision and roadmap. We say it's been somebody else that's been doing it, the product manager has been doing that, but we feel like it trickles down to us and it comes as a surprise. We need to contribute earlier so that we can also give the team perspective into things. So they will download it in the more of, etc., etc. But the key thing is, it's about facilitating those conversations. And it doesn't stop here. Then once we've done this part, it's now about focusing on the elements in the outer rectangle to identify what's the action that's required for this. So if you said you don't facilitate or you don't do backlog refinement sessions, what action needs to be done and who's going to own it after this session? And they, as a group, there's this saying, if they write it, they won't fight it. And as a coach, as an agile coach, it's not about being the sage on the stage, it's about being their guide by their side. So you ask them, okay, so you have, of your own free will, I didn't tell you to start doing it, but you said you do, you need to start doing it, so what are you going to do about it? Because if you tell them, then the ownership for following up with that action is going to be on me if I told them. But if they said, this is what we think we need to do, and this is who I think I'll own it, then they're more likely to follow through with the actual action. So they would identify who owns it and what they're going to do, and the rest, the same happens with the rest of the items on the board. So for this case study, some of the outcome was like there was an improved visibility and shared understanding of what people were doing. And of course, during the session, the fact that it was visual, it wasn't like a spreadsheet or a long Word document. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but most people process we all process information differently. And having it visually on a stickies helped with bringing or bridging that gap in communication and giving us a point of reference that we all could zone into. So it helped with relevant conversations, both as a group, and after the session, they were also able to show this to their line management and have necessary conversations with them. And for some of them, the product management group, they were able to demonstrate, because usually they'll say, I have a lot on my plate, I have a lot on my plate, and the line management will be like, she's complaining again. But by the time we did this, and they showed an electronic copy of it to the line management, they actually said, oh, you actually do a whole lot, right? And that made a case for an additional set of business analysts to be added to the team to help them with those sorts of things, to elevate the responsibility on their plate. It enabled them to identify actions to move from their current state to the desired future state. And they have also role descriptions that takes into account the context of the work they do, that they can share with their stakeholders, because there was a confusion about who does what. So some facilitation tips as I round up is this: it's more effective if you do it role by role. Don't try to boil the ocean. You can't just do it as a whole. But there are instances you can do it as a whole team. But my focus right now, this case study is more about on a role. So if it's for Scrum Masters within a team of teams like not, bring them together so that they have a joint understanding. If it's product management or product owners, etc., do it role by role, because that helps with focusing the session. And it also, don't start with a blank slate. Populate the center board with generic responsibilities, and then have them add things or remove things as they see fit. Now, it's really about being a neutral facilitator in this process, because it's now them having conversations. Encourage conversation and debate while keeping focused on desired outcomes. And then remind them that this is not a once and done activity. Things will change, and as they do, you don't have to do it often, but as things change and you feel they're significantly changed, that you need to have another of these conversations, you do so, and inspect and adapt as required. So before we summarize, what would be your key takeaway from this book? Anyone? Okay, I'll walk to you. I'm not throwing.
Thank you. Maybe we all recognize, because I also saw it in your model, that stopping and handover are mainly the most difficult topics to discuss. How did you handle those things? Because if you look at the model now, it doesn't seem a lot went off their plate, but more or less it shifted or put on their plate.
Okay, so I was asking for key takeaways, but you've given me a question, so I will answer your question. No problem. So you said stopping and handover are the most important aspects, and how did I get them to keep them focused on that conversation? It's all about asking questions, but I can't tell them you have to stop this. You need to have them come to a realization, and sometimes it's a conversation that you might have to visit a few times before they come to the realization themselves, but it's not about telling them what to do. So when I facilitate these sessions, I don't tell them what they need to do. I just ask questions to clarify. So, okay, what you're doing, okay, you think you need to keep it? Yes, okay. Is it adding value to your stakeholders, to the customer? Does it make it more efficient? No. So why do you think we should keep it? Because it's the way we've always done it. Okay. So I leave it there, and it might not be the right time to pursue it, but I try to encourage them to consider things that they can stop and handle it. So it's a depends question, and it's also like there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Anyway, but thank you very much, sir, for that question. So I'll just round up. Classroom-based training is almost never enough, and we need to support them, to kind of make sense of whatever they learned. And teams, because they, as teams and individuals, sometimes, I personally sometimes struggle to apply what I've learned in the classroom or course in my real life context. So sometimes that additional support is needed. Sometimes you have to roll up our sleeves and help them have those conversations. And my humble submission is, would you consider using maybe the SLoMoSH canvas for this sort of conversations? Would that help you? for me, for the teams that I've used, that it's made things clearer for them. I wouldn't say, okay, as a fairy godmother, I waved the wand and they lived happily ever after, but that hobble, has definitely gone. I'm now going to go find a dentist to help them with the toothache, because there are always going to be problems to be solved. So with that, that's all I have, and thank you so much for listening and for not falling asleep on me.
That's all we have for now. Thanks for listening. If you like this show, do subscribe at www.agileinnovationleaders.com. That's agileinnovationleaders.com, or your favorite podcast provider. Also share with friends and do leave a review on iTunes. This would help others find this show. I'd also love to hear from you, so please drop me an email at ola@agileinnovationleaders.com. Take care and God bless.